Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking you through what details I add to babies' faces and how I add them. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a like and consider subscribing. And as a reminder for those of you that don't know, this baby is going to be for a giveaway when I reach 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is where we had got to at the end of the last episode. You can see there is some light mottling on this baby and a little bit of detail already. And I am continuing with these same paints, so I am using the Ultimate Fusion Air Dry paints in the primary colours. And I also have a little bit of white here. This is a different brand, this is waterborne, but I didn't have a white in the Ultimate Fusion. I'm not sure how much I will use this, but it's good to have on hand. I also have a couple of darker colours in the Ultimate Fusion, so I've got a brown and a deep blue vein here. I might use some of these just to darken the primary colours up a little bit, particularly if I'm going in areas like inside the nose where I want it to be quite dark. This is my ceramic palette, and I usually use these large spaces when I'm doing washes, but when I'm doing a lot of detail I don't use a huge amount of paint, so it's actually better for me to use these smaller sections instead. So what I'm going to do first of all is actually make up a couple of different shades. So I'm going to do two quite different shades of red here. One I'm going to make quite pink because I think that's what I want to be putting on the lips. So I will be adding in white. And for this shade, I think I'm going to want it to be almost a plum colour. So I'm looking at this brown and thinking, what happens if I add in just a smidge of that brown and then possibly a smidge of this blue. I will say this is my first time experimenting with these colours. Usually I use waterborne, so we're going through this learning process together. I am then diluting these with my distilled water, and it's very possible that I'll need to dilute these further. But let's start with this. When you're doing detail paints, you definitely don't dilute them as much as when you're doing washes. Okay, so now I have mixed these two colours up here. I am just going to see what this one, this light pink, looks like on these lips. So every single time I do my lips, I do them a different way, and a lot of it is just trial and error. But I'm going to see how this looks, and it's quite alarming at the moment, so don't worry. I'm just kind of testing this out, and then I'm going to go in with almost like a blendy brush and blend it out and just see how it looks. Sometimes it needs a couple of different blendy brushes. White can often leave like a weird residue, so I am trying to avoid that with this. But I just wanted to adjust the tone of those lips. And I was also thinking that these cheeks are a little bit too yellow, so I wanted to see what a light pink would look like on those as well. Using that same fluffy brush. And that's really half of what reborning is, in my experience, is experimenting essentially. I layer colours until I'm happy. Sometimes I layer colours and it makes me less happy. And then I've learned for next time, but it's not the end of the world because they are quite light layers that you're doing. So it's rare that whatever you're doing will completely ruin your doll. And that's why some of the dolls I make, I like to go into them knowing that these are going to be experimental dolls. And one like this, which is for a giveaway, I know I can experiment with it and it's not the end of the world if it goes wrong. I'm adding that light pink colour to a few more places around the face. And blending it in. I do think these ears could do with a wash of this light pink colour over the whole thing as well. So I will just do that, including slightly inside this bit. And you might be able to tell on these ears that I've already actually started adding some veins in. I think experimenting is really important because the more you experiment, the more you will learn what does and doesn't work with your paints, with your brushes, with your skills and techniques. And sometimes you'll discover something that is absolutely incredible. Right, so this darker colour that I have mixed up is still quite dilute, so I'm not sure it's going to be exactly what I'm looking for at the moment, but I will. Yeah, it's definitely too dilute. I'm using it inside the nose to create that inner nose shadow. And I actually find this really hard. This is like one of the most difficult parts of painting for me, is getting basically accurate dark areas. But what I can see this colour being really good for at the moment is when you want to deepen an area just a bit, but not a huge amount, and also like blending that. So I've just added it into that ear, and then I'm going to go in with a brush that I can use as a bit of a blendy brush. And I am going to apologise if you can hear any weird noises because my husband is currently sanding upstairs. I am also going over the eyes with this, just a little bit, similar to a wash, and then I will go in and refine. So taking off any excess and blending out those edges. Eyelids can be all sorts of different colours. I like mine to be a little bit red, and I will also go in and add veins on the eyelids, which I think makes them look a lot more realistic. And I have realised that this colour I have made up here is really good for any creases. So for example, going just around the nose here, and then I go in with a slightly blendy brush and just blend that out. So it gives a little bit more depth in this area. A lot of what making a baby realistic comes down to is subtlety. So it's having lots and lots of thin, subtle layers to make up different variations in skin tone and colour. Now I do think I added too much blue into these lips early on, and that is not something I can now undo, but I am going to try and make the lips more three-dimensional by adding some shading in. So I have made a thicker version of this colour. You can see there that it is definitely thicker. And I'm going to get an incredibly tiny brush, and I'm going to use this to do things like outline the lips and go into the middle of the lips as well. So for example, I'm going into that lip crease where the lips press together to make that a bit darker. And this is actually a really good colour to use in the nose as well, so I will be using it there. And I am going to start painting on a little bit of a lip line, which I will use another colour, as in this colour, just to kind of blend that in, both above and below that lip line, so it looks more natural. But we still want it to be present. So painting that lip line in the thicker, darker colour, and then using the same, basically the same shade, but a thinned out version to bring that and bring it below and above that lip line, which will help it blend into the skin around it. And I'm going to do that all the way around the lip. So I've done that subtle line all the way around the lips and blended it just out above and below the lips as well. And I'm going to use that same paint and go right in, hopefully you can see this, to the nostril. And I think this will probably end up either taking quite a few coats, or I might just need to make my paints thicker, because I always find that inside the nostrils struggles to take paint. Some people do drill the nostrils out. I am not confident enough to do that. But if you look at a real baby, the nostrils are super, super dark, so it is important to try and emulate that at least a little bit. And I'm going to do the same just in that inner ear. So just the part of the ear that would be like a hole. Again, some people do drill these out. I've never seen ear holes that are drilled out look completely realistic, but so I'm just going to go in and keep deepening those inner ears, and then I also might bring it slightly into the creases if I want to make those creases darker as well. So for those areas with creasing, I am just going to be going in again with that tiny brush. I have probably one of the world's largest collection of tiny brushes, because they are so useful for all these little areas. And then going in and just making sure those creases are blended out, so it's not like a harsh line, but it's just subtle shading. I am going to paint on the eyelids some veins, so I'm going to get, this is a really fine brush. This is just a makeup brush. I think it's a Morphe one I got a while ago. So you can see here I can be really precise when I am painting with this brush. So this is actually one of my favorite brushes. So I am going to use that to paint some super fine lines on here to make these veins. And honestly, when I first started doing this on my dolls, I was just like, oh my gosh, this brings so much realism to them. I absolutely love it. And they are incredibly subtle little veins. I'm essentially just doing little squiggly lines. all over the lid. Babies do have quite veiny eyelids. You'd be surprised. I often take pictures of babies' eyelids just because it's good for reference. So it's a subtle difference you see from this eye to this eye, but those are the veins. Another detail I like to do is adding little dots to the face in kind of this similar colour. So it's quite normal for babies to have cheeks that have a lot of mottling, or you can see the capillaries and the veins on them. So I will often go and essentially just like draw those capillaries on. I'm not sure you can see it on camera because I do like it to be incredibly subtle, but you might be able to see it a bit more on this baby that I did previously. So you can see how I've drawn those capillaries on the cheek. So I am slightly diluting this one because I don't want to show it to show up quite as much, but again, this is just another addition. It's not necessary. It's just something that if you like it, you like it. I quite like these because my granddad had a lot of capillaries on his cheeks, and every single time I do this, it reminds me of him. So that is what that cheek is looking like. Another thing I'm going to do to add a little bit of skin detail is again kind of diluting those two, and I've done it a little bit on the cheeks where I've added like a couple of dots here and there, and then I've just patted them away, but I do like to do that as well in places like just here, for example, which might be somewhere that you would have a little blemish as a baby. So I'll do that and then just pat it away. So it ends up being a very subtle little blemish. Layer on, pat away. But again, this is something that is very common with little babies, that they have these little areas of blemish. And some people like their dolls to be completely blemish free, and I completely get that. And some people like them to have lots of these little areas of imperfections because then it makes them more realistic. It's just down to personal preference. So you can see, super subtle, but there is a little tiny blemish there. So this is where we have currently got to. And next time we will be looking at hair painting. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm just going to do a little shout out to my members here. Thank you so much for becoming channel members and supporting me. It really does mean the world to me. Before you go, I hope you have a fantastic day, and I will hopefully see you next time.